Hello everybody! In this video we are going to solve the 2016 standard level biology final exam paper. The textbook's related pages will be indicated on each slide in a yellow box. And the first exercise is about the inventions of plants. One representative of each of the 4 plant phyla are shown in the pictures below. Write the appropriate capital letter into the empty boxes. We can agree that this is a kind of gift exercise. So, the first image is showing us a gymnosperm very clearly. You can see the cones here, needles, so it's easy to identify. The second picture is showing mosses, so A. The third one is an angiosperm plant, and the last one is a fern. Okay. They are plant with flowers. We know mosses are non-vascular, ferns are vascular but non-flowering, and gymnosperms and angiosperms are the seedy vascular plants, so C and D. They reproduce with disseminated spores. Mosses and ferns reproduce with spores, so A and B. They have fruit, only angiosperms have fruit, so D comes here. The seeds are formed on the open ovuliferous scales. We know that that is true for the gymnosperms, so C belongs to this box. And the pollen grains are carried by the wind. That is also true for the gymnosperms. The plant shown in the bottom left picture is pollinated by insects, so we are talking about this picture in here. Which visible characteristic of a plant allow us to say that? So we know that when a flower is wind-pollinated, typically the flowers are really small and they are not really colorful. But in case of brightly colored large petals, there is a high chance that the plant is animal-pollinated, and in this case, insect-pollinated. So the plant has large petals. Okay, second exercise. Geckos and owls. The burrowing owl shown in the picture lives in America, whereas the leopard gecko is a reptile in Middle Asia. They both mostly feed on insects. Based on your knowledge and the pictures, compare the organisms with respect to their body structure and mode of life. The pictures are not drawn to scale. Okay, so its body is covered with keratinous structures of the skin. We know that actually the integument is keratinized in case of reptiles and birds as well, so C is going to be the good answer. It reproduces with soft-shelled eggs. That is true for the leopard gecko, but not for the bird. Just like in case of birds and some mammals, it is an amniotic egg, but it is soft-shelled. The size of its pupil is controlled by the muscles of the iris. That's going to be true for both of the animals. It has regulated body temperature. We know that reptiles are poikilothermic, birds are homeothermic, so birds. So the owl comes here, A. Its pupil has a vertical orientation. If you don't know it, you can also see it in the picture. So the gecko comes to this part. Skin breathing plays an important role in oxygen transport. That's going to be D. As we know, skin breathing has an important role in case of amphibians and fish, but not in case of reptiles and birds. It reproduces with calcified hard-shelled eggs. That is going to be A. Sorry. It has internal fertilization. That's true for both, so C. In the food chain, it is a primary consumer. None of them are primary consumers, as it is indicated in the text. With extensively overlapping fields of vision, it has excellent spatial vision. That is going to be the owl, so A. Okay, exercise 3. DNA synthesis. The DNA polymerase enzyme seen in the picture is synthesizing the complementary strand relying on the template strand of the DNA molecule. The arrow of the 3' end shows the direction in which the synthesis of the newly made strand proceeds. Answer the following questions based on the picture and your knowledge. Okay, the first question. If the next bases of the template strand to be read off are ATT, GCAG, what is going to be the base order in the complementary strand? Write your answer on the dotted line. In order to answer this question, you have to remember what you have learned about complementary base pairing. So adenine will always be paired with thymine, and cytosine will always be paired with guanine. 2 hydrogen bonds are present in between these two and 3 in between these two, but that's not the question for us now. So only the complementars are needed. Therefore, the complementary strand will be the following: T, AA, CG, T, C. Name the cellular organelle of a eukaryotic cell in which the process shown in the diagram takes place. DNA synthesis is happening in the cell nucleus, so it takes place in the nucleus. Name the organelle on which the DNA polymerase enzyme is made. It is made on the ribosome. Write the appropriate letter into the box next to each numbered statement. Okay, DNA polymerase enzyme, DNA molecule, both of them or neither of them. Its monomers are linked to one another by peptide bonds. That's going to be true for the DNA polymerase enzyme. So A. Its monomer, the nucleotide, contains phosphorus. That is true for the DNA molecule. If you remember, a nucleotide is made up of a pentose sugar, in this case a deoxyribose, a nitrogenous base, and a phosphate group. So that's why we wrote B in here. Its spatial structure is determined by the order of amino acids. That's going to be true for the enzyme again, A. Its spatial structure is strengthened by hydrogen bonds. That's going to be true for both of them, so C. It carries genetic information. That is the DNA molecule itself, so B. It can also be found in bacteria, which is going to be true for both of them, so C. Exercise 4. Big head carp in the Lake Balaton. Read the excerpt carefully about the wildlife of Balaton. Reporter: as far as I know, the herbivorous big head carp was introduced into the lake not only because of its meat, but also to consume the blue-green algae, which is responsible for the algal bloom. GTL is the abbreviation of G. Laszlo, who is a hydrobiologist and ecologist. So, there had been a lot of debate among experts before the introduction of the big head carp into the lake. Alek Vojnarovic, the acknowledged fishing expert, believed that it was worth introducing the fish because it would clean the lake of blue-green algae like a living vacuum cleaner and turn it into delicious fish meat. However, hydrobiologist Lajos Felföldi stressed that in order to control eutrophication, its primary cause, the phosphorus input, should be eliminated. He was right. The introduction of the big head carp did not meet the expectations. The reporter: as far as I know, the algae consumed passed through the body of the fish without building into it. The answer: that would not be a problem because the digestive juices of the big head carp are so powerful that they digest the blue-green algae in no time. The problem was that the big head carp did not only feed on algae but also on tiny floating animals called zooplanktons, which are also the primary food source of the young native fish species in Balaton. Since algal blooms do not typically occur in the lake anymore, the big head carp has increased its zooplankton consumption and has become the competitor of the native fish species feeding on the plankton. To make matters worse, net fishing the big head carp does not work either, because the fish get frightened and can jump out of the net. Exercise 1. Draw the direction of the flow of matter in the food web of the Balaton based on the excerpt. 2 arrows have already been indicated. So we have discussed that the blue-green algae is consumed by the big head carp and by the native fish species, also by the zooplanktons, and zooplanktons got eaten by the big head carp and by the carp as well. Exercise 2. The organisms traditionally referred to as blue-green algae are no longer classified as plants, but as one of the groups of prokaryotes. Name one important difference between the blue-green algae and the green algae in terms of their cellular structure. So in order to answer this question, you have to remember what you have learned about the prokaryotic and eukaryotic differences. The most relevant difference is that prokaryotic cells don't have a cell nucleus. Only the nucleoid region can be found, the circular DNA. So that's what I wrote in here. But as you can see it in the key as well, other alternative answers would also be accepted. How did they manage to reduce the amount of phosphorus getting into the Balaton? Write the letters of the correct answers into the boxes. So let's quickly go through the possibilities by reducing the amount of fertilizers applied. That is one of the answers. By introducing the big head carp into the Balaton, We read it in the text that it is not affecting the phosphorus content by growing the blue-green algae, okay, by cleaning the sewage water, that is another good answer, by increasing the amount of zooplankton. No, so A and D are the good answers. Name the type of population interaction occurring between the bighead carp and the carp populations. As we have read it previously, they feed on the same food source, so there is a competition between them. Describe the basic idea of the two different suggestions as to how to reduce eutrophication. Complete the missing parts of the sentences. So again, we can find the answers in the text. So Alek Wojnarowicz thought that the amount of blue-green algae could be reduced by, and it is written down in here, introducing the bighead carp. Okay, you can find it here. And then Lajos Felföldi suggested that the phosphorus content, the amount of phosphorus input, should be reduced. What effects do the following events have on the amount of carp supported by the Balaton, reducing the phosphorus input? So if the phosphorus input is reduced, then less algae will be present, more zooplankton will get eaten by the bighead carp, therefore less carp can survive in the lake. So the result will be the reduced amount of carp, and the possible extinction of the bighead carp, it's a direct connection, obviously will increase the amount of carp. All right, let's move on to the fifth exercise. From Leonardo's notebook. A part of Leonardo's notebook is shown in the picture. The drawings illustrate the working of the biceps, which is a flexor muscle. Find the letter indicating the biceps in the picture and name also the bones indicated. So the first thing that must be named is this A part. When we learned the skeletal system, we named these bones as carpals. We know that the wrist region is actually made up of 8 little bones, and the carpus itself is called this part. Then B is showing us the radius, C is the ulna, D is the humerus, and then E is a muscle, which is actually the biceps, and F is showing us the scapula or shoulder blade. Okay, exercise 2. Leonardo illustrated the insertion attachment of the biceps in such a way in the picture that he cut the muscle, as it might also have been done during the real dissection. Name the bone on which the insertion point of attachment of the cut muscle can be seen. So the bone is the radius. In reality, it is not the muscle tissue that attaches to the bone. Name the structure that forms the connection between the two organs. When we learned about dense connective tissues, we discussed in detail tendons and ligaments. We know that tendons are responsible for connecting muscles to bones, so tendon is the good answer. In the upper and lower drawings, the arm is shown from different viewpoints by Leonardo, but there is also another difference to be discovered between them. Describe this difference. So we need to compare this and this bone, and if you look at the lower arm region, you can see that the radius and ulna here is in a normal position, but here, normal, so here is a parallel position, but here they are twisted. So this difference can be seen. The radius and ulna cross each other. Based on the above information, describe the two functions the biceps performs. It can help us to bend the arm, and it also turns the palm. If you touch a hot object, it is the reflexive contraction of the biceps that allows you to remove your hand. According to our present knowledge, where is the cell body of the neuron found, which acts directly on the muscle? Okay, we know that it is found in the central nervous system, more specifically in the anterior horn of the gray matter of the spinal cord. So it's enough if you write in the spinal cord. Okay. Let's continue with exercise 6, starch and cellulose. As far as I remember, in the 2019 standard level paper, there was also an exercise which was entitled starch and cellulose. But anyhow, compare the two important organic molecules, write the appropriate letters into the empty boxes. Okay, so starch and cellulose, both of them are polysaccharides. Starch is made up of alpha-glucose monomers, cellulose is made up of beta-glucose monomers. This is a storage substance in plants. Cellulose is the major component of the cell walls, and obviously we learned many things about them. Let's look at the statements and figure out which one belongs where. It is a polysaccharide, so as we discussed, both of them are polysaccharides, so C comes here. It serves as a food reserve supplying energy. That's gonna be true for starch, so A. It is an important constituent of the plant cell wall. We have discussed that is going to be B, cellulose. It occurs in the cells of the potato tuber, both of them. Okay, it is the typical carbohydrate molecule of animals. We know that in animals, glycogen is the stored carbohydrate, so none of them. The human digestive juices are unable to digest it. That's going to be true for cellulose. Cellulose digesting bacteria can digest this kind of polysaccharide. It is one of the constituents of the cell membranes. That's going to be D. Cell membranes are made up of phospholipid molecules. There are also proteins, integral proteins and peripheral proteins, glycoproteins, and we have also discussed that in case of animals, cholesterol molecules can be found in the plasma membrane, but definitely not these kind of polysaccharides. It is formed by the reaction of glucose molecules. That's gonna be true for both of them, as we have discussed. It is made on the surface of ribosomes. That is D. None of them are proteins. Interacting with iodine, it gives a typical dark blue color reaction. Actually, that's gonna be starch. Don't forget. You can test the presence of starch with the help of iodine. Its digestion in humans already starts in the mouth cavity, and that is also starch. Salivary amylase is responsible for breaking it down, mainly into maltose dimers. Okay. Continuing with the next exercise, the engine of the body, the heart. The diagram shows the structure of the human heart. Which letters indicate the parts that carry oxygen-rich blood? Write the appropriate letters into the boxes. Before we actually start to do the exercise, quickly name the parts which are labeled. A is showing us the pulmonary artery, B is the vena cava, C is showing us the right atrium, D is the atrioventricular valve, E is the right ventricle, F is showing us the aorta, G is the pulmonary vein, H is the left atrium, I is the pocket valve or semilunar valve, and J is the left ventricle. So the vessels which are actually carrying oxygenated blood are going to be the pulmonary vein and the aorta, so F and G. Name the part indicated by D and describe its function. So the part is called atrioventricular valve, and we know blood flow is controlled by valves everywhere in the heart and some other parts in the body, and the atrioventricular valve actually allows blood to flow only one direction. That's the function of it. Which is the correct order in which the blood flows? The letter refers to the diagram. Okay, so as I see it, in order to answer this question, we have to remember what we have discussed about the systemic circuit and the pulmonary circuit. So here we have the lungs, and actually from the pulmonary artery, the oxygenated blood will be sent towards the lungs, and gas exchange takes place in here, and the oxygenated blood arrives back to the heart through the pulmonary vein, and with the help of the aorta, the oxygenated blood will be sent to the body part, so the systemic circuit. Okay, in our tissues, in our cells, basically biological oxidation is taking place, so we use the oxygen, and the deoxygenated blood will travel back towards the heart, and actually the vena cava carries this blood. So out of these options, BE, A, lungs, F, that's not good. BEA, so BEA, lungs, and G, that sounds okay. Body, okay, G, that is not okay. Body A, no. Lungs F, no. So we can confidently say that B is the correct answer. Name the blood vessels that spread out into the heart muscle. Okay, so in the myocardium we can find the coronary vessels, which are actually supporting the heart muscle with oxygenated blood, and unfortunately if these vessels are blocked, we are talking about heart attack. So the next question is actually connected to this condition. So what is meant by the term heart attack? So when these vessels are blocked, some part of the heart can stop working, or in more serious cases, the heart itself. So the death of the heart muscle. Unhealthy lifestyle is a risk factor of heart attack. Name one such lifestyle factor. Now many things can be mentioned in here. I just mentioned smoking as one factor is needed, but if you check the key, you can see that alternative answers will also be accepted, like the lack of physical exercise or consumption of fatty food or uncontrolled permanent stress. So unfortunately all of these are contributing factors to this disease. Alright, so let's solve the last exercise, globalization and dangers of epidemics. In the past decades, the traveling time has greatly been reduced, and the migration and population exchanges have significantly increased due to increased tourism, increase in population size, and the opportunities to work abroad. The term global village has come about to describe the phenomenon. However, apart from expanding opportunities, it also results in the possible spread of contagious diseases. The various forms of the hepatitis virus and the typhus bacteria are considered the fastest spreading ones by health experts. The hepatitis viruses cause the inflammation and damage of the liver, and the infection mainly spreads through contaminated drinking water and food. The typhus bacteria are transmitted through body lice in overcrowded communities living under poor hygienic conditions and cause circulatory disturbances and even thrombosis in the central nervous system. Based on the above information, write the appropriate letter into the box next to each statement. Alright, so let's look at the statements. It consists of hereditary material and protein coat. We know that bacteria are much more complex than that, so the good answer will be A. The protein coat can also be called capsid. Its metabolism takes place in its cytoplasm. That is true for the prokaryotic cell. Its DNA is stored in its cell nucleus. That is a strong D. They don't have cell nuclei. It is transmitted by intermediate hosts. We could read it from the text that lice is responsible for transmitting the typhus. So, and lice is a parasitic insect, so B comes here. It can cause the formation of blood clots. It is also written down in the text, so that's gonna be B again. It can only reproduce in living cells. That is true for the absolute parasites. So those are the viruses. Mutations can give rise to new forms. That's true for both. Okay, it spreads under poor hygienic conditions. That's true for both. First one is contaminated food and the other one is, overcrowded communities living under poor hygienic conditions. So C. It can be destroyed by appropriately chosen antibiotics. Antibiotics are effective against bacteria, but not against viruses. The disease-causing agent of the hepatitis is not considered to be a living organism. Give your reason why. So viruses are obligate parasites. They don't show the characteristics of life. They are not real cells, and actually they don't have their own metabolism. Okay, so we finished the 2016 paper. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. And never forget, hard work pays off. Bye-bye.